Like when I was like first figuring that out, like years ago, the whole like not straight thing, I was kind of like, all right, you've got to find like a specific word that's just for you, because you know that's the way that it is.
Maybe before high school I started to realize like all these labels, and I would try to like figure out which one was mine.
You're straight, you're gay, you're lesbian, you're bi, that kind of thing.
Giving myself these labels can be empowering at times.
Like there is like a lot of pressure to conform to just one label, I think.
It grounds me and it lets me like identify the way I want to, as opposed to standards that have already been set for me.
Pigeon Holed. A hole or small recess for pigeons to nest. A small open compartment, as in a desk or cabinet, for keeping letters or documents. A neat category which usually fails to reflect actual complexities. My generation's new reality is that queer teenagers have more options for how to define themselves than ever before, but with that comes even more pressure to identify exactly who you are. I get asked all the time by people what my sexuality is, and I never know how to answer in a way that will satisfy both them and me. I'm curious about the difference between people choosing labels for themselves as a form of empowerment and people being asked to label themselves in ways that are limiting, how people identify for themselves versus how the world asks them to identify.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Sammy and I'm 18.
I'm Wallace and I'm 16 years old.
I'm Sylvia Bird and I'm 15.
I've always identified as queer and trans for sexuality and gender respectively.
Well, my pronouns are he or they.
But also non-binary at times. I've always felt that confining ourselves to a very rigid binary makes no sense.
It's like if when someone were to ask me, just randomly, how I were to label myself, then I'd just be like, oh yeah, I'm gay. But I think I kind of just don't really care enough to label a specific thing, asexual, pansexual, all of these sexuals.
Lesbian was used a lot for me, so at some points I would adopt it, but it makes me that was a label I had a hard time following because I don't identify with that in any way.
I would say at the age of 4 or 5, I had no longer wanted to identify as a boy, simply because all the other men and boys that were around me were just very chaotic and hectic, and I felt very uncomfortable around that. Being around my more femme relatives and community members was comforting, and it made me feel more safe.
I've known I was trans since I was 5, so I think when you don't know the labels, it's very easy to identify. There's no need to say I am this, I'm that. I just kind of knew.
Most times I have interactions with people, they'll question my gender. That's usually the first one, mainly because my voice is kind of a giveaway that I wasn't born this way, appearing this way. And so I usually try to explain things with terms within the binary, because most people will understand that. I mean, these are things that I'm still trying to figure out, so it's difficult explaining to people exactly what I am.
I prefer the word queer, although some people think it's more of a slur, you know? But so was gay back in the day, and still now people use it as a slur. So just in the hopes of keeping everyone happy, I think gay is a better word.
One of the questions I had going into this was how my subjects portray their identity physically to the world through style choices. Clothing, hair, and makeup choices for anyone are a representation of both how we see ourselves and how we want others to see us. Because style is so intrinsically linked with identity, I had my friends speak to their own clothing choices and experiences.
I think aesthetics and appearances can be very gratifying for queer youths, especially when you're in such a transitional period, having something that you can put on that just feels instantly gratifying is just a really good feeling.
I guess I use my gender expression to like show my gender identity, but not all people do that.
I've had a lot of like just conflicts with my appearance, and I'm pretty sure many people in like this community have as well, because there's just like so much dysphoria tied to like appearances.
Style's always going to affect you because it's who you are and who you show to the world. So I mean, I'm wearing a flannel right now. That's pretty gay, but I don't wear it because I want to show people I'm gay. I just wear it because, you know, I think it's cool, but also it's kind of gay.
There's like very specific articles of clothing that like lesbians would wear, like flannels or like snapback hats, or like there's like even like YouTube videos online about it, like how you know like a girl is gay if she like wears like a certain thing. So I remember I would try to conform to a lot of like those like rules, I guess, but it just like didn't always feel right.
When to be gay, LGBT was just becoming a thing, like to not to like becoming a thing because it's always been a thing, but to like show that to the world and have it be accepted is just becoming a thing, and there are still like many people who aren't accepted for it. It's really important to like have a label and therefore a community of people who know who you are and what you're going through and who you can talk to. So in that way, labels are really important.
We get so obsessive over labeling things because it brings us a lot of comfort. You know, being able to identify and say like what a certain thing is just a good feeling.
Also, as time goes on and to be LGBT is more accepted, I think we'll have less of a need for labels. And in the end, differences, they divide us, and what we need is not to be divided because that leads to conflict.
I feel like ideally I would want like a specific label that would fit me and I could like be happy with.
People will like say whatever they want and I don't really care because, you know, gender's all in your head. It's like a human like a thing. Like scientists have like done studies on the human brain, and like gender's not a real thing.
A lot of the issues with labels are a societal thing. Like people have literally been killed for their labels and, you know, identifying the way they do. And I don't think that's an issue with the concept of labels, but just with the way people perceive things. And like perception is so subjective. It's difficult to hold something like labels to an objective standard when they're held to like subjective means.
People feel the need to box other people in order to make sense of the world, and are uncomfortable with the chaos of people who can't be put into categories. I think now I understand why labels are so vital for people, especially in the queer community, but we shouldn't need to label ourselves in order to be seen as human.